Something I found out from actually reading your piece, Alan, that there seems to be some historic precedent, right? You bring up that this isn't the first time that an American president has basically started beef over trade and tariffs with Canada, and it also overshadowed an election campaign. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a bit of a tidbit for the history buffs out there, but we're going back to 1891, so 134 years ago. And it was the sixth and final election of Sir John A. Macdonald, who was the Conservative Prime Minister, the first Prime Minister of Canada. And he was up against Sir Wilfrid Laurier, a future Prime Minister of Canada. And the issue, oddly enough, was all about trade with the United States. The United States at the time had tariffs against Canada to sort of protect its own economy, its own industries from goods from outside. And the decision was, or the ballot question in that election was whether have free trade or um, to have tariffs against the United States to protect our industries and our businesses and our companies. And so Sir Johnny MacDonald argued in that campaign that that we had to raise our own tariffs against American goods to protect ourselves, and anything else would essentially open up Canada to the threat of annexation, to becoming the 51st state is a term that we're using now, but that was an issue back then that we would be taken over by the United States.
Mhm.
And we won that election on that issue. And of course, things evolved, and after the Second World War, the trade opened up, and our economies integrated and became as they are now, sort of it was a free trading zone, and that's really sort of being called into question by the election of Donald Trump.
It's fascinating. It's almost like deja vu all over again. But coming back to what's going on now, when we talk about US interference, what exactly do we mean? What does it look like? Walk me through that a little bit.
So traditionally, when we talk about foreign interference and um, election interference, we're talking about subterfuge. We're talking about cyber attacks,
Mhm.
buying off politicians. We're talking about secretly making payments to individuals to influence how they're going to vote and how they're going to act when they're elected to parliament. Uh, this is something different what we're seeing in the United States. Essentially, what we're seeing is just sort of it's almost like a bully campaign or a bully pulpit. It's very blatant. There's no attempts to be subtle or to hide what's happening. I mean, these are pronouncements that are coming from the Oval Office directly from the president, beamed live on social media and on TV into Canadian households. There are messages that are on social media from Elon Musk and other individuals in the Trump administration. And so some people will question, it's not the traditional foreign interference that we're talking about, but it is uh, certainly a strategic and very intentional campaign to intimidate in many senses
Mhm.
uh, Canada and to sway the Canadian political debate.
And when you wrote about this, Alan, you mentioned something called below threshold tactics that President Trump seems to be deploying against Canada, which is a term not usually commonly used for friendly countries. Could you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a term that I found. It was basically a paper that was looking at the tactics used by Russia and China. So below threshold attacks are essentially what it says. They're things below military attacks, below bombs and bullets and deployments of soldiers that are intended to sway or influence or intimidate an adversary.
Mhm.
It can be diplomatic. It can be sort of words, campaigns in global forums. It can be economic attacks, right, to try and weaken a country's economy. It can be disinformation. That's a big one. And these are all sort of not things that we apply to the United States traditionally, specifically when we're talking about Canada-U.S. relations, but they're all things that apply in this situation, right? They're below threshold attacks. United States has not invaded Canada, And there's no indication that soldiers are massing on our border, but there's many things leading up to that, right? They're saying we won't protect you in the event of military necessity. If you're invaded, you're on your own because you're not paying your way. Your economy will be hollowed out and cratered, and that's your responsibility. It's not ours. And before, it was always this sort of partnership. Um, this maybe it's actually a written, in many senses, written treaties saying that we'll protect you and you will protect us and we'll come to each other's aid. And those agreements, they're sort of off the table now.
Let's talk about the upcoming federal elections. And of course, Donald Trump looms large over this one, whether it's disinformation, whether it's his rhetoric, or his claim that he changed the Canadian political landscape. His influence is palpable. So, how much of this election do you think is really about him? Is it all about him?
Yes, short answer, it's all about him. Um, the election is 1 week old, but it has been dominated by Donald Trump. And at this stage, at least, it's hard to see how any other issue is going to, overtake uh, that issue. We often, as reporters, we often ask, what is the ballot question going to be? What is going to be that one issue that decides
Yeah.
how people cast their ballots? Often it's the economy, right? We would have thought uh, prior to the election of Donald Trump, we would have thought it's inflation and who's sort of best to deal with that. Now it's Donald Trump. Who's the strongest? Who's the best equipped to stand up to him? Who's the best equipped to uh, sort of transform the Canadian economy, to find new trade routes and new markets for our goods? This is, I think anyone will tell you that this is not a 4 or 5 year effort. It's a generational effort. What's being proposed? Um, you know, but the next government, whoever it may be, has a lot of serious work on their hands. And so I think at this point, right, and there's still a few weeks to go in the election. At this point, the issue is who's best to manage that transformation. If you look at the poll numbers, right, and the change, I mean, when Donald Trump was elected, the Liberals started to go like this, and Pierre Poilievre started to go like this, and it's just it's insane. I mean, it's almost unprecedented. I can't imagine in recent memory anything that has caused such a bump and a shift in public opinion.
And Alan, my last question is, which you've already spoken to a little bit, and I can't believe that I'm asking it in this context with the United States, but what measures can Canada implement to safeguard its electoral integrity against this kind of influence, particularly when this interference is originating from a country that we traditionally view as an ally?
I know that the federal election authorities were talking about this in the first couple of days of the campaign, that they're going to be really on high alert for interference because of the geopolitical circumstances, if you will, the known threat from the United States. Um, I know that, and this is sort of related, but I mean, in Greenland, right? Greenland had an election, and the Danish intelligence agencies, they said, they're under annexation threat from the United States as well, and the Danish intelligence agencies said that yes, there's the threat from the United States, but there's also a threat of Russia using these threats from the United States to sort of stir up concerns. So, I mean, there's all sorts of sources of interference and potential threat, and there is, by all accounts, Canada has a very sort of robust and strong sort of cyber security agency that is prepared for and can handle these sorts of this sort of interference. But as in terms of voters, individuals, I mean, the best thing we can do is be aware, right? Be informed and be aware. Know what to look for, and know, that when you see something on your Facebook or your Twitter or your TikTok, and it looks too good to be true, or it looks too crazy to be true, that it probably maybe is too crazy, right? That there's all sorts of uh, artificial intelligence and fake voices and fake images, and there's all sorts of things that can be done. Uh, but if you're on guard for it, if you're informed, that's the strongest defense, right? Make your own decisions. Don't listen, question what everyone is saying. Ask people where they're getting their information, and that's really all you can do. I mean, this is the interference that we're talking about from the United States is not, as we said, it's not subterfuge. It's not hidden. It's in some cases lies, in some cases exaggerations, in some cases just sort of bullying and repetition. But ask if it's true and figure out for yourself if it's true and if you believe it, and what you think about it and what the consequences are of Canada becoming a 51st state, or or whatever. I mean, knowledge is king.
Strange days is all I'm going to say, Alan.
Chinese proverb, less.
Thank you so much for your insight, Alan, and for speaking to us all the way from Paris. Really appreciated it.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.